Welcome everybody to the latest YUI Open Roundtable. We have we're continuing our YUI in the Wild series today with Simon. Is it Hojberg? Is that how you pronounce it?
Hojberg.
Hojberg.
But that's okay.
All right. He's going to talk to us about the work he's been doing with ES6 modules and how they work with YUI modules and some of the conversion stuff he's been working on. So I'm going to pass the baton to Simon. Welcome, Simon.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I think late last year, support for ES6 modules landed in YUI, and we picked up some of that stuff at Swipely, WhereWork, and started converting some new stuff we've been doing early this year with the help of the Square transpiler. And just a few versions ago, I think, YUI.require landed, which
right.
means we can do some better stuff in instead of our YUI use statement. But I can show some of that stuff off if you like. I'm not sure exactly how the format you like this to go at, but I have a little gist I can show.
Yeah, that's fine. Show us wherever you like.
Cool.
Your video quality is astounding, by the way.
Oh, that's good. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I've seen the font up a bit.
Okay. So just kind of puts these in a weird order, not the order that you create them in, but that's weird. Anyway, so this is an example of a good old-school YUI model. A simple module that uses another module called my other model. There's a comma missing there, but you get the gist. And ES6 module that this module in ES6 would look like this instead. So it's very similar, but it doesn't use YUI add obviously, and it has dependencies in using these imports thing. I don't know. Do you guys want to do like a full introduction to ES6 modules?
Well,
or
we
just
don't
how they convert?
We don't have to do a full thing since we talked about it through Open Roundtable before, but we can talk about like the parts that are interesting here. I mean, one question I have off the bat is, can you actually do import base like that with no binding? Does that work?
With no binding?
Yeah, without putting like a local variable name for it, or local binding for it. Like, you don't have to say import capital B base from quote.
Yeah.
Base.
Okay. So yes, you can. That totally works. So this module will transpile into this. So it just requires base down here.
Oh, interesting. I never knew that actually would work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's valid syntax, and he's like abusing the fact that instead of exporting something, it's sending something to the Y.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is kind of annoying, but I'll get into that more. So anyway, this is how it transpiles, and obviously there's the imports and the exports object, and I put this on the default, so that's where that is.
Isn't there a bug here on line 17?
On line what?
17. Shouldn't it be __ exports __?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I hand wrote this out of.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah. Say the transpiler is broken.
No. This normally works. So that's really cool. What's weird is obviously these things, as you noted, that you can't, and like the core YUI modules don't export anything, as far as I know. So this is the only way I know of using them.
Oh, you're saying you have to directly do the requires versus already have them available?
No, just like not assigning base to anything, because there's no export, because importing base or requiring base in the YUI world will put base on Y, right?
So if you do like import and then you do the like named exports where you do like import curly's base from base, it will actually create the right binding for that value base will equal y dot base essentially. It'll be just like doing var base equals y dot base.
I see. So okay, so how does that work? Do every YUI module now export stuff? But just not on the default key?
No, so it's kind of a hack. What it's doing is replacing like instead of having like a module object that contains all the exports, it just points to the Y. So it's not entirely correct. I think it works because we kind of made it work, but I think your way is a bit more correct in the sense that you don't expect it to be a named export, you just assume it's in the Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And as long as we live in this like middle ground between YUI and ES6 modules, I think it's the right way to go.
You're on IRC, right, Simon?
Yes.
Here, I'll paste in the YUI channel something you can open if you want to click on that tab. That's what I was. So see at the top there.
Oh, I see.
And then you can see it used on line 5 there.
Right.
And in this case, I'm using base.build because I know I want the create function off of the base module. So it's still kind of hacky here, right? But it's just this works as well in YUI at least.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I mean this. Sure, it's a hack, but it still kind of looks like you're just writing ES6 code, so that's good.
Yeah.
Are you using the ES6 module transpiler as well?
Yeah, and this one we're using the one from Square.
Right. Sorry, that's the one I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're using that too.
Yeah, they're joking on IRC that they were forcing Simon to do all the transpiling by hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a lot of modules, and we started.
Before you get too far, can you tell us a little bit about what's the project you're working on? You say you have a lot of modules. What's the app or website or?
Right. So I work for Swipely. Swipely is we process payments for restaurants and smaller brick and mortar shops or medium-sized brick and mortar shops, and provide a bunch of analytics for them. We kind of like provide e-commerce analytics type things for a brick and mortar thing, payment processing. Give the customers, our merchants, a very good insight into how to run their business and how to improve. So that is the portal they have. We call it the portal is a single page application using YUI. We're also using some React. And we just started using ES6. So we have it's fairly large. We've been working on it for a few years now. And I think when I tweeted this originally, I said we had 535 modules, which probably still is correct or thereabouts. And yeah, I basically had to change by hand all those modules from this to ES6, and it took a while, but was totally worth it. And one of the biggest gotchas when doing that was if you have like 3 modules and module A requires module B, and module C uses module B but doesn't explicitly require it, because module A is requiring module B, B is also available to C because it's attached to the Y object. So figuring out places where we missed adding a require statement was a mess. And you obviously can't get into that pitfall with ES6 modules because of the very explicit imports.
Yeah, and so as part of your build process now, do you guys actually go through and verify all the imports and exports so that they're all in sync that way?
That's the only way that the module will work, because they're on the imports object, as far as I know. Or is the import also global?
Well, no, I just meant so a cool thing I've been seeing is there's been some people writing build tool wrappers that will analyze your modules using ES Prima, which is I believe what the Square transpiler is currently using, to understand what all the imports are. But then look at your entire set of modules that you're compiling and make sure there's something that exports those things. Basically the graph. And actually Juan has been working on something similar to generate a graph of all the imports and exports, which then you can go through and do a verification step and just flag even at build time saying, oh, there's going to be a problem in this module. You're asking for something that it doesn't export, those kind of things. But,
right, yeah, we don't do any of that. We don't catch stuff that hasn't been exported, but because I think we're running it through a normal ES6 transpiler, meaning arrow functions and block scoping and all that stuff. We are catching errors where we try to call a variable that doesn't exist. So if if line 2 didn't exist in this file, our transpilation step would fail.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But no, we don't have anything for recognizing if all files have a correct export. But that's a cool idea.
Yeah. Although I think to be able to use such tools to do that verification, probably you will have to use relative path or something to differentiate modules that are coming from YUI from modules that are coming from your application. That will be tricky. So I wonder what, on line number 4 on that file that you have open there, normally what you're assuming that Y is going to be there, and it is going to be there you compile to YUI, but it's not going to be there you compile to something else in the future. So probably instead of having line number 4, you will have something in line number 1 saying, give me base from base, and then in line number 4, you just use base,
Right, I would do exactly what Eric is doing over here.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Cool.
So when I just have a quick question. When you went through and did 500 modules by hand, which it seems like you maybe should have gotten an intern to do or something. But no, kidding aside, did you recognize any sort of common patterns where you could almost imagine a tool going through and doing that? Because one interesting tool, I don't know if you're familiar with that, Facebook has been, Ben at Facebook has been working on is Recast, which I'm wondering if it could have been used for this sort of thing, because it would be great if there is a pattern that we could write a recast script for and then help other people transfer their modules over like you did, but not have to do it manually.
Right. I haven't looked at Recast, but that definitely seems plausible. I just had a bunch of Vim macros that I ran through my files to get this done. But yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of places where we differ slightly in syntax from others. Sometimes we, instead of having assigning my model to a variable here, we assign it directly to my model. There's a bunch of variations that are possible that makes it a little bit more challenging to write something that converts it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and in that sense, Recast probably will catch that.
But yeah, something like Recast for. Yeah, cool.
So the purpose of you doing this was so that you can now normalize your development, or what was the reason for moving to ES6 modules?
Well, okay, so that's a great question. I think moving to ES6 modules right now is a no-brainer for any application. That there's no doubt that this, in some way or another, will be in the language natively, and there are tools now that enables us to get started right away. So yeah, we just felt like, okay, this is cool. Let's just jump on board. It's going to happen either way.
Right. So this is like basically preparing for the future in a way that sort of protects you, because now you were mentioning like once you've converted these, did you have to transpile them back, or?
No. But the irony is that I converted YUI modules to ES6 modules, and then through my transpiler are converted back to YUI modules. Right? But
yeah, but
and
that,
it runs faster than you could do it, right?
Yeah.
That reminds me of there's a site where you can take movies and translate them into like Japanese and translate them back into English, and the words will be all wrong.
but I think the point.
Did you have any of the strange things like that pop up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that. Well,
Oh, it's
Jerry, we can't hear you.
No,
Oh.
Why not?
What?
Do you hear me?
It's going all crazy.
What just happened?
Does it work now?
You're there now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was saying that well, obviously you are now in a much better position because you happen to use some pieces from YUI, but your entire application is not YUI specific. You can compile in the future to something else. You have replacement for those bits from YUI. You will be able to produce an application that is not tied to YUI at all.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, the intention of this was not to get rid of YUI, but it is now possible to, whatever happens with YUI down the future, we're safeguarded against that if we need to.
And then and the other. Oh, I guess go ahead if you were going to say something else. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to ask about metadata. So were you guys maintaining like a JSON file for each one of your modules with the requirers?
Good question. So I built this module, this grunt plugin last year, which we're still using, which just looks at your entire dependency chart and makes a config file from that. And we had to do no changes to that as we.
Yeah, because you're collecting that info from the build files, like the result of the build.
Exactly.
Eventually, you might want to use the source code, the ES6 modules, rather than using the output of it, like collecting the graph from the actual source code.
I see no reason why we would do that, but enlighten
sorry,
me.
how does your configuration work?
So this creates.
Run task work? No, I was asking how the grunt task works.
Right. So it loads up all your files. It kind of hacks in Node with the require function and adds a global YUI object so that the grunt plugin listens for YUI add calls, sniffs the contents of the module, and then puts them in a large
Yeah, this is similar to locator YUI. Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that you may not want to do that in case in the future you stop compiling to YUI, because you may compile to, I don't know, if you write like, if you write modules that you want to share with the server, you may want to compile to Node modules. Well, I guess in that case you can overwrite required too, but
yeah, I mean, I think having a config file like this is very specific to YUI right now, at least. I know require.js also has a version of this, but yeah, I would need to do a bunch of work either way to support a different module system.
How long does this take to run on your code base with 500 modules?
So not long. I can time it. But this also compiles handlebar templates, and it does less. So yeah, 4.2 seconds.
Cool.
Or 4 seconds.
That's pretty fast.
So
compare that to how much time it took to do it by hand.
Yeah, there is always a dilemma of whether you use the source to compute that configuration that you need or the destination of the build. I guess it's fine for now. One of the reasons why using the destination is good, because you can gather files from different places and do build process to put them all into the same folder and then analyze the folder and get the graph for the folder. That's probably one of the good reasons of doing that. But in the future, we might want to use the source for different reasons, including the one that Juan mentioned. But since we don't have the tooling yet, eventually we'll have more tools. It will be probably easier to do it at the source level, especially because we want to also support something that we don't have in YUI today, which is relative path and more complex structures, not just folders and module names. I wonder, I suspect that you are only picking up the files, one of the files, not all of them, because you will have the minify debug version and the raw version or something like that, and you have to kind of clean that up to pick up one of them only, right?
Well, so we do that a little bit different. We always just have unminified files, and minification and it is a byproduct of deploying to production. Simple as that. So that is not in our repository at all, and the grunt YUI config module just runs on the minified files instead when we deploy.
So one other point about this is that with the way that you're doing this and the way that we've done this in the past, and I know like Pat Cabot, I believe, has something similar. You have to execute all of the code to do this. Like you actually have to run it to run through all the functions of the YUI add calls. Whereas with the doing it,
well, no, because YUI add accepts a callback, and you don't have to execute the callback.
Sure, but I guess what you have to do is actually execute the YUI add call. Whereas with the ES6 modules, you just have to parse them. You don't actually have to run any code, which should in theory be faster maybe, because like the parse step should have to happen in V8 just like it's going to have to happen in ES Prima or whatever. Yeah. Assuming V8 is probably faster, but then you have to do this additional thing of executing. So that's another thing, I guess, that the static analysis aspect of the ES6 modules is a nice benefit that we, eventually all the tools can start leveraging better. Like JS Hint could tell you in your editor, like, oh, you're trying to import something that a name that this other module that you're trying to bring it in from doesn't actually export it. I mean, we could imagine that happening at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be real cool.
Right. So yeah, it should be fast enough for something like JSLint to do, but also like in the case that I was just saying, if you're compiling to CommonJS, then there's no callback there, and you can't actually run anything without running the code, which may have some implications. So yeah, so
you do, right? You can always create a context and execute in that context, which is what we do, by the way, in later stuff. Yeah, but yeah, I think point taken. That in the future we might want to use a source and add more things like code elimination and crazy stuff that we can do later on with the static verifiable files that you will have.
So yeah, Simon, this is something that I wrote based on a parser that just takes source code and gives you back all the list of imports and exports of your module. And there's also like a matching grunt task and broccoli plugins you can use.
Your font a little
more than this. Yeah. So essentially, you get this function that you run it on your source code, and it gives you, an object that looks like this. So from that, you can build very easily the YUI configuration by changing imports to requires and taking the keys here.
Cool.
And there's a grunt task that just generates a JSON file, so you can just require it from your node server and send it to the client.
Nice. I'm going to check this out for sure.
Yeah, we just need to open source it. I'm hoping it will be in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're sharing it core.
Yeah, so
revealing our secrets.
Yeah,
we just wanted to get the data structure finalized is the main thing before we open source. But it's a small enough thing that it shouldn't be too long until we can actually get it out there.
So one of the topics you mentioned, Simon, at least on the outline, was like, what does ES6 mean to the future of YUI? What is that?
Yeah. So I guess this is a question for the room. Not just ES6 modules, but also ES6 in general. I know you guys had some thoughts on this already at YUIConf, but I'd love to hear about how that might have evolved.
Yes. So let's see. So the module system is the biggest one. Really, what we want to do is start trying to break down this like walled garden essentially that YUI really is forces people into in a way, and really try to open it up so that code written as ES6 modules can be easily used within YUI. And this is the whole understanding imports, explicit exports, having the require, which is somewhat similar to like what will eventually be system.import in browsers, and
right.
And really getting to that point. And then in terms of leveraging other ES6 features, I think what I don't imagine is us, like, if we were to go through and rewrite all the YUI modules, we'd probably try to use some tool to do it, just because then we would try to work on something that then other people can use. So we would spend probably way more time than you did trying to get the tool to work, where we could just go through like the 100 modules or whatever by hand and do it quicker. But that way then it can scale out to other teams being able to use. So I think we would want to look at things like that if we were to convert code over. But then in terms of leveraging a lot of the new features, the one thing that we're probably not going to be switching YUI to doing all that. But what we do want to do is make sure that if you're running a YUI application, that you can load in polyfills and these sorts of things, like load in, like we already have promise built in, But like if somebody wanted to have a polyfill for other ES6 features or even ES5 polyfills within their application, we want to make the YUI loader be better suited for doing that. Right now, it's not as good as it can be, and we want to make it better in that regard. But then also trying to, I guess another model-related thing, we're trying to figure out the best way to support maybe not having to generate this YUI configuration, but for it to be automatically figured out based on like your modules can be paths or something is one thing we've been talking about. I forget if we figured out if there was a roadblock for that or not. But yeah, so stuff like that is really what we're thinking. And then one of the things that we've realized from YUI that I think we want to move past in other code that we're working on, other libraries, is to embrace more using polyfills and using standard built-ins and polyfilling them if they don't exist, then creating these wrapping APIs like we have like y.array.each. And the problem is once you have code that starts depending on that, you have this like hard dependency on all of YUI. And you see this happening in like in the Node community with underscore or Lodash, where people are just wanting to use like a merge function, and they pull in all of Lodash. Well, there's going to be object.assign or merge, or what is it? What is the standard thing that it's called? Extend.
Assign so far, I think.
Yeah, so object.assigned will be there in ES6, where like Lodash has extend, YUI has merge, and the problem is like you have to then depend on those whole libraries. I guess in Lodash's case they broke it out into separate modules, but in underscore's case, you have to depend on this whole library, and YUI is even you're depending on more code. So we really want to embrace this idea of polyfills a lot more, because we would like to make it possible where like your guys' code could be using the native built-in for each methods on array or map reduce, these kind of built-ins that you want to be using. And then you could load polyfills into your application if you care about non-ES5 browsers, for instance, would be one thing. And that way you start removing these like very basic dependencies that you have on YUI and start using more of the bigger stuff. But then like maybe class syntax comes around and you're realizing that you're really just using maybe base because you want to write classes in a slightly more convenient way. But maybe you want to start with
my next question.
Yeah. But in terms of like us going through all the YUI code and rewriting it all to do that, I don't think that there will be like that big of a win of doing that. I think what's more important is for application code that depends on YUI to be doing that kind of work and rewriting work like you're doing with modules. I think is a perfect example of something that makes a lot of sense for you guys to do, where it doesn't really help YUI that much because we're just going to transpile back to YUI modules, unless it starts to become the case that a lot of code wants to use parts of YUI as ES6 modules or something. We could look at that, but we have all this backwards compatibility to maintain, and that's one of the biggest things. Is that really prevents us from doing too much radical things with the library without going to like YUI 4 or something. So I think that's kind of the way at least I see it. I don't know if anyone else in the room or Juan or Carrie, do you want to add to that?
And in the same token, this will allow us, like right now we're doing things like importing Hammer.js and other libraries out there. And when everyone starts talking ES6 modules, we'll be able to more easily integrate with them. It's not just a one-way street.
Yeah.
Exactly. So people don't have to like make YUI versions of like every existing like library out there.
Right. And we can take advantage of the best of breed for events or whatever.
Yeah, so I think that ties well into what you're alluding to, Eric, about classes in ES6 and object.observe and what that means for YBase and the event system.
Yeah, I mean,
as a user of the library, maybe not the internal.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's we should see that as like us and other people who are writing JavaScript libraries see that as a success when all of a sudden these things are built into the browser. That means that they're being standardized, which is good. Like everybody takes their crack at it, and then hopefully the process of all the developers trying that and working as a community, and eventually those things becoming standards, sort of the best features and the most compatible thing with the existing language features ends up winning and making it in, or in some cases, like, you know, browser vendor companies have agendas that they push and get things in. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing, and the standardization process causes like a lot of these compatibility, interoperability things to be figured out. And that's really what I think we would want to encourage people to do, and try to make sure YUI can help with making sure that people's application code bases are very interoperable. So if you choose YUI as sort of the main thing you're building your application around because you like the loader, you like having modules, you like all the other tooling and documentation stuff, then we want to make sure that when you want to use like Moment.js or something, that you can just easily bring that in, and it's not a big pain in the ass to do so.
Isn't it true also that future versions of ECMAScript will themselves be extended by modules and things like that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. It's TBD at this point, but that seems like the path. A lot of the path forward is to, instead of new features being added as globals or on the global object, that they'll become modules themselves. So if you want to, use some new feature like BigNum or any of these kind of other things you could expect being added under modules, you would just import them in your code. And so yeah, that's definitely something to really clean up this sort of standard library that JavaScript provides for ECMAScript.
I know you mentioned this before, Eric. Do you want to talk a bit about like how this is affecting like the Node.js side of things?
Which part? The ECMAScript stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can, unless, I don't know, I'd rather give more time up to Simon.
I think he was curious about that as well.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of the Node stuff, I mean, they are also going to be dealing with this backwards compatibility thing. So require a Node, it seems like it's going to be sticking around. It's unlikely that they can get rid of that. It would be probably the demise of the entire project or platform if they did. So they would have to maintain it in some fashion. But what would be great is if that was implemented on top of ES6 modules, or those were at the core, and there may be some new API for interacting with things that way. And that would be almost really similar to like what we're doing in YUI. Is, you can, but they would be able to make it just work, I think, without a transpilation step, since V8 would support the modules natively, and they could maybe hook into that at a lower level to be able to pull that off. But I think we'll see. I think we want to get them engaged in the discussion more and really see where things are at, because the one thing I want to see is that Node.js maintains itself as an ECMAScript runtime and not pick and choose features and start to become a divergent thing from what all the other runtimes are going to do. So that's pretty important, I think, for the longevity of Node, for that to be the case, because the language is going to be changing a lot in ES6 and ES7 once all these features are implemented. And for Node to not have those, now it's going to feel like, the IE of JavaScript development, where you can't use all the new shiny and fancy things and solve the problems the way that you do in the other runtimes. Where it's usually the reverse now, where it's really nice that, hey, you can assume that it's every Node process is an ES5 runtime. So that's great. You don't have to worry about silly things like not being able to loop over arrays with for each, and just the very basic things that you can't do in the browser if you care about old IE. So that's one thing that I hope to see. Although I think just trying to keep having conversations with them and getting them involved and making sure that I think there's enough people now who care about both sides, Node.js and ES6, that will make it happen. So.
Yeah, I think that Eric is trying to say is basically that probably users or developers will start using something like system.import, and they will be able to import ES6 modules natively because it's supported by VA directly, but then having a system.import that also knows how to recognize that this module is really not a ES module, but a legacy CommonJS module, and go and get it for you, and support that interoperability between them. But we will see what happens in the future. The other way around is going to be pretty messy because we have tried with the transpilers and all that, and it's going to be messy. So hopefully that will be the way, like just people relying on system import, just in the same way that they will do it on the browser using system import as well. But we'll see.
So Simon, I had a question for you. In the course of starting off working on this task, what were some of the things you wish you'd known ahead of time?
Yeah, like I said, the biggest problem we really ran into was places where we did not explicitly have requires in place because we simply forgot them, and the system worked because some other module required them. So that was a very big gotcha for us. That provided a bunch of problems. Yeah, other than that, it was just mainly just a lot of manual work, just converting things. Luckily, we had all our modules were named as the folder structure, but using colons instead of slashes. I think the version we picked up when we started using YUI didn't support slashes in the module name, so that's why it had colons. So a lot of work was just replacing that with slashes. So that was simple. Instead of having to like figure out exactly to convert like a very simple module name to a full path. And I think the file path is what the ES6 module transpiler does by default. I think you can supply it an actual name, but I haven't looked into that.
Have you noticed any difference in performance or anything? Has it just been a no op for that?
No op, yeah.
Yeah, I think you are way better at this point because now you can start using recast to continue modifying those modules and make them to use new features and potentially, like Eric said, like the classes and stuff like that. You can now start using recast because you are now just a ES module, and that would be pretty easy, I guess.
Right, we're using another ES6 transpiler to get like arrow functions and classes. I think it's just called ES6 transpiler by Termi or something, which does need a small ES6 shim, but it's a very low footprint compared to Tresor, which is a crazy undertaking.
Yeah, well, I was more focused on continue evolving the source code,
right?
Not really the transpile step. Like whatever happened to the transpile, yeah, you can do whatever you want there. But I mean, like what I'm trying to say is that the big overhead here is for people to go and change all the source to get into the state where they can have ES modules working, and then from there it's gonna be easy for everyone to just simply evolve that code over time with tools and things like recast.
Definitely, and I think the path to that is very simple. It is just a matter of rewriting some files, and YUI works out of the box with this now. So that's great. I mean, yeah, it's boring work, but it is simple.
Yeah, that's why I think that's why I was curious if you saw like a lot of clear patterns that came out of at least your source code, and then it's interesting to hear where a few of the gotchas were, because I think that'd be something that we would probably, could invest in on our team, would be to come up with the like recast script that could do this sort of thing for everybody and do it in a couple of seconds. And it would be a pretty fun thing to work on, I think.
Definitely.
And then we could have maybe have that commit to the library where we convert everything to ES6 modules. I think that would have to be the thing we would do to do it.
Yeah, Juan, you think you could break the bill? Just wait till that happens. That'll be a 3.99.
Sounds about right. Are you guys using anything more than just ES6 modules right now? Like any other ES6 features or ES future features?
Yeah. We're using arrow functions, let const. We're not using classes, but yeah, we're using a bunch of stuff. Yeah, arrow functions a lot.
Object observe stuff?
We're not using that either, no. For the event stuff, we still just use YUI.
Yeah. What do you think of using let? Does it feel normal or does it feel weird?
It feels awesome. I think it took a while to just get rid of to get out of the mindset of the bars at the top of your file or top of your function. But yeah, now it's just natural. And we use const way more than we use let, actually. We kind of use const as a way to indicate that this variable is immutable or whatever, even though that's not true. But yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if we should look into ES classes and how they can somehow work with YUI classes and at least provide some sort of guidance on that. Since the only difference in between is the mixes.
Yeah, I feel like one of the gaps is this, the process that these went through, and the other folks from Google and stuff like that. This process of knowing how to take your YUI components and transfer them over, like sort of step by step. The on-ramping process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Carity, in terms of your question about the classes, I think that they'll probably be a little further off. Like, I don't know if you remember at the last 239 meeting, you was talking about decorators, and that I think will be kind of the required thing we would need to really have this sort of hooks and feature fidelity, or at least like the look of the source code that somebody's typing to match better what we have today with YUI, and then we can provide the implementation of how those decorators are actually working on the prototype or whatever for the class object in that regard. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think decorators would work for stuff like y.attribute, but like assuming you have y.attribute, if you wanted to use class syntax while still using the get and set methods, the biggest problem is still, like Carty said, like base.create. And I think he's right in that maybe we can get away with a way of using ES6 classes to generate something that at least behaves similar to base.create.
Yeah. Well, cool. Did we have anything else to talk there?
Yeah, Simon, did you have any last comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's no reason not to use ES6 modules in both YUI, but also if you're starting some new library that you want to open source, like it's very common to see underscore, for instance, exporting to different module systems in the bottom of their file. And I see no reason why not cutting that and just using ES6 and let the developer transpile to his or her module system directly.
Yeah.
Yep. Plus, who knows what kind of like new IDEs and things like that are coming out that'll take advantage of this, like graph views of all the imports and exports.
Exactly, and then you would be able to like jump to a defined module, for instance, and that would be something that would be super useful.
Yeah, you mentioned that because that's something you can get in like iOS development, right?
Exactly, yeah. So someday, once people stop building like another build system and they work on like amazing JavaScript development environments, that'd be great.
Yeah, someone's just going to get tired of hand coding things.
Well, we have it. I told Juan that I was working on doing one tweak in Here's website, which all the client-side JavaScript is now as ES6 modules that it compiled to YUI. But we're still maintaining a hand-maintained file that represents the dependency graph, so that can be provided to on the browser side to do combo loading. And I told Juan that we need his module graph thing out there because it's the last time I want to hand modify a YUI config file like this and have it be generated for me based on my imports and exports.
Yeah, we promise that's the last time that you will use that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I mean that's another thing we mentioned is that this would be great for like continuous integration and testing because the tests will be able to depend on this and fail much more quickly or much more intelligently as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, editors will give you that information. But on the other hand, it's like the most complete editor for JS development will always be the browser, right? So you're probably going to be able to jump to the declaration of in a module, but inside like Chrome DevTools or
yeah, definitely.
DevTools.
I think they already have stuff like that.
I think we'll see those things come up faster in browsers than we'll see them in like Sublime or whatever.
Is that part of like source map as well?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Sort of, because it converts the compressed code.
Yeah. So there are tools you can use to like create source maps out there.
Well, Simon, we appreciate you coming today. And what time is it there, by the way?
It's at 6 p.m. I think I'm in the same time zone as Eric.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're just like 30 miles south of me or something.
Yeah.
Or less. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thanks so much for coming today, and keep up the great work, and let us know if you have anything else that you want to demo or show off in the future. We'll be happy to host you here again.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Yeah.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cool. Yeah. I'm glad like all the guys working on the ES loader were able to come in.